All right, and we are back with the newsletter number 23, I believe it is. And today we're going to continue the conversation from the last time when we talked about strategies and why they fail. And according to Harvard Business Review, there are, top three reasons why go-to-market strategies fail is one, not understanding the user's problem, two, creating an unrealistic strategy that the company can't execute, and number three is not understanding the time needed for execution. Today we're going to be talking about number two, so creating an unrealistic strategy that the company can't execute, and it's a problem that I see often especially when working with smaller teams, smaller, seed stage startups, a team of 5, 10, 15 people, because they're just, not building their strategies on assets that they have, but on, ideas that look good on paper, but don't work in real world. So stay tuned, and yeah. So Harvard Business Review says that 60 to 90% of strategies fail because, and one of the main reasons is because companies create strategies that are simply unrealistic and the company can't execute. This is probably the number one reason why I always advise to create a strategy with somebody who knows how to do strategies, because companies will often create strategies that are just impossible to execute because we don't have the team that can execute them. The companies start there thinking of, oh, what do we want to achieve, but they don't actually know if they can achieve it. So for example, we can't have a good Facebook advertising campaign if we don't have a good Facebook advertiser in our company, right? We can't expect to compete on Facebook if, then we employ a junior social media manager who just finished their university studies. Nothing against them. They will learn and become good, but at this point in time, they don't have the ability to compete on Facebook for us, right? So we can't, unless this is a 3-year plan, we just won't be able to compete on Facebook because this person needs to learn, needs to make mistakes, needs a mentor, and so on. So if our goal is, we'll grow on Facebook in 6 months, that's not a realistic plan. So creating a marketing strategy or a go-to-market strategy that is based on Facebook is not a viable option in that case, right? But tons of companies, tons of startups especially, are still doing it that way. And then they can't execute, and usually these strategies remain unfinished. Now, from experience, I can tell you that this mistake comes down to two things. The first one is what I call the idea trap. It's basically when we're brainstorming about all the possibilities of what we can do, we all have tons of ideas, right? We all have oh, we could do this and we could do that, and then we could do the third thing. And then too many things just pile on, and everybody's idea is taken into the consideration. And basically, what we're trying to do is just too much for the team to handle. It looks good on paper, but when we're trying to do too much, we just can't execute every part of the strategy, at 100%. We basically execute at maybe 60% because we don't have the skills, the knowledge, there is too much work to do, and then obviously it doesn't work because, well, we made a shitty job. The second thing that ties into this is that, there is always an internal pressure to perform. So that means that, the team is going to be aligned on what it needs to be done. The strategy is going to be created, but then the CEO will say, all right, but we should also be thinking about this. And the team, especially if it's a junior team, doesn't have the power to go against the CEO and explain, look, this won't work because of this and that. So that it's taken into consideration and it destroys the strategy basically. And for example, this is exactly what happened with one of my clients a couple of months ago. For example, we were like, hey, let's create a go-to-market strategy for a new product. We have an internal list of 3,000 emails, and this is B2B, so 3,000 is a lot. Let's try to sell to them. Let's try to revive some of that list. It hasn't been used in a while, but let's try to revive that list. They've shown interest in the past, so they're potentially good clients. We'll need to clean that list, but still it's a good starting point, and we have an audience that we can sell to. So let's create a go-to-market strategy to basically revive them and get new conversations started with the existing list of emails that we have. And the CEO was on board. She was immediately on board, saying, that's a good idea. We have all these leads. We're doing nothing with them, etc., etc. And the next day you get an email. All right, but we should also create a strategy to get new people in. But if this is a small team, of 5-6 people, it's gonna be difficult to do two full marketing strategies at the same time. You should really focus on one thing at a time. You have, basically what you need to ask yourself is what's gonna drive revenue, what has the best potential to drive revenue in the next 3 months or 6 months, and just do that. Because this is B2B, so that means that we create a strategy for these 3,000 people. We track who is interested. We track click-through rates on the email side. So we track who is interested, and we pass that data to the sales team, right? And the sales team now needs to call these people. But 250 people responded. Now you have to make 250 calls. How are you gonna handle 250 calls if you're also doing like new engagements on LinkedIn or wherever? If you don't have the focus on one thing, then what's gonna happen is that these calls will just be, all right, so let's not do calls because we don't have the time. Let's just, send them another email or another message, and basically now you've lost 250 people. And you're doing, at the same time, you're doing something that might not even work because, on LinkedIn you have a cold audience and so on. So basically what you're doing by splitting the strategy, by, the strategy that came from the initial idea, is you're just destroying the existing strategy, which was in the beginning a good strategy to drive revenue in the next 3 to 6 months. But as always, there's this internal pressure to perform, and the CEO usually has the last word, and the marketer can't really say, or sometimes doesn't have enough power to say, hey, this is unrealistic. And so we create a strategy where parts of the strategy just don't make any sense and we can't execute them. And that's why, as we learned in the last newsletter, it's really important to test strategies against the market, but it's equally important to test the strategies against the team. So, how many calls can we actually do in a single day? If we have a sales team of, 2 people, we can't do 200 sales calls in a single day, not even in a single week. So what can the team actually achieve? That's why one of the first questions when we start working with a client is, what kind of assets does the company have? What can we use to make this strategy good? How can we play to our strengths? I usually, I see companies just chasing shiny things like, oh, we should do Facebook, or lately, we should switch our CRM because it has AI or whatever, it does the outreach for you. Yeah, but do we know how to do that? Because if you don't have somebody who knows how to do that, how to execute that, those leads are still not going to convert. We won't be able to execute. So for example, we can do, inbound marketing. Let's say we create a perfect go-to-market strategy that's going to bring in 500 people sending inquiries via email. Perfect, right? We have 500 MQLs there. But if there is nobody on the other side that handles those emails, that actually, picks up the phones and the phone and calls those people, the whole strategy goes to waste. So how can we test against the team? Usually what I found is that the simpler the strategy is, the better, right? A go-to-market strategy doesn't have to be all that complicated. It just has to be well executed. And if you base it off, a user need, is gonna work. It's gonna bring people who are interested in this moment in. At the end of the day, it's not rocket science, but companies tend to overcomplicate the strategies. So for example, with one of my clients, this is a consulting company working in the M&A space. Our strategy, is to basically pick up the phone and call people, because this is what it came down to, because the CEO simply had good network connections that he simply didn't use. He didn't follow up with people, he didn't call them on a regular basis. And so, all that it took to make him 20K a month is picking up the phone and call these people. And, he got the results in a couple of months. And he's now just, growing steadily from, 15, 20K to 60K. Sometimes, the simplest strategies are simply the best solutions. Or another example, when I was beginning my newsletter, I was thinking, how can I bring in the first 100 people into my newsletter, into the newsletter that you're now reading or watching. And I was thinking all sorts of marketing hacks and growth hacks, and I could offer a referral program, I could do whatever, I can post about it on LinkedIn, etc., etc. What worked in the end was just contacting my existing followers on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I'm starting a newsletter. If you're interested in startup growth, if you're interested in positioning and strategies, sign up. This is what drove subscribers in the beginning. And that's how I got the first 150 people into this newsletter. So I don't understand why is Facebook that much sexier than just keeping it simple and contacting people. The more time you spend thinking about the strategy, the simpler the strategy will get. And often the simplest strategies will bring in the best results. So think about that. And until next time, may your customers love you and understand your product.